Hello, my fellow individuals. I am Mr. Mini Mask Man here, and today I'm going to review Season 7, Episode 3 of The Walking Dead. Now, obviously, if you have not seen this episode, then please do not watch this video as it contains spoilers and even possible comic book spoilers. Alright, so this episode, I think like I said from the last one, or at least that we knew, that this was going to focus more about the Saviors and their compound, the Sanctuary, how they kind of do things. And like I said, I was going to focus more on Daryl and Dwight. And I was right. And that rhymed. But anyways, okay, so what was funny was when it started, like the episode just started, you hear like, was it Who's the Boss intro with the song going. I think it was 70s or 80s sitcom. Like that whole intro, where it showed Dwight and all that, it was just for some reason, it felt kind of interesting and weird. It kind of felt like a sitcom intro, but things were getting, it's a more serious, darker setting. And yet we kind of get this campy music going, but I guess it's some odd charm, I guess, for this episode. And we're going to hear that kind of music almost most of the time in this episode. So what it shows was that it kind of introduced more. This is more about kind of the mind of what Dwight's going through and a bit of Daryl as well. But I don't know what I felt in this episode. It was more, like I said again, it's more not an introduction to a character, but just kind of shows more of what this character thinks of and what he's going through, or what he's been through, and where he is like right now. What's his stance and all that. So what I thought was interesting was when people. Well, let me go back to this. When we see Dwight, in the very beginning when Daryl saved him, and then he kind of betrayed him, and then not really, and then he betrayed him again and took his stuff with his wife Sherry. They're kind of like, wow, what a douche, And then later we see him again, but this time with half of his face burnt off. And then obviously we notice, okay, so Negan punished him, They probably caught them, found him, and, Negan punished him and made sure to never do it again. So, yeah. But he kind of reveals what happens later on, which I'll talk about in a bit. So here we see Daryl actually is in a cell, kind of trapped, just in the cell where they try to break him mentally and torture him. Not physically, but mentally torturing him. Kind of that's more Negan's thing, more mentally than physically. Kind of like a little bit of the opposite with the governor, where he was more physically torturing, the people to get these answers or whatever their goal is. Negan, on the other hand, is more mentally torturing of whoever he's got captured. And what we saw with what he did with Rick big time. But anyways, so what I thought was kind of almost throughout the episode, whenever they put Daryl, whenever Dwight brings food to Daryl, which is like bread and some dog food that we saw, and he just kind of gives them to him every day in the cell. I believe like they overplay this music. Was it We're on Easy Street? That one over and over, where it just drills in his head, which is, at the beginning I thought it was just, at the very first time I thought it was just background music. But it kind of felt like, but not really, because I kind of saw, we saw kind of Daryl's reaction to it, and I was kind of like, oh, you can hear the music, maybe it's not. And then when they played it the second time, I'm like, okay, now it's not. I can tell it's not just background music. This is the music in the story, in the show right now, and he has to hear that same song over and over and over again, and it kind of got drilled to my head, actually, by the end of the episode. So I thought it was kind of, I don't know, it was, at the beginning, I felt, it was kind of, not really comedic, but it was just kind of like the song choice for that. I thought was kind of interesting, it's like very, very campy, kind of 70s, 80s, tune. And like I said, it almost felt like a sitcom, but in this weird, darker setting. And the first 2 or 3 times, or 2 times at least, it was kind of like just I was kind of chuckling and giggling a bit and kind of singing along with the song. But later, when Daryl kind of gets almost broken, when Dwight shows him the picture of, I believe it's Glenn, the aftermath of what Negan did with Lucille, he started breaking down and all that, and they finally changed the song, and the song matched with his emotions, to cry, and he started breaking down, he started crying, and Dwight was outside listening, and then, once he heard him, or at least I think what I assume he heard him crying a bit, then he left. So, and throughout this, with Daryl's journey in here, was more Negan trying to show Daryl that he likes Daryl's attitude and all that, and he says he's a perfect asset for the Saviors. And he's giving him a chance, the first time Daryl escapes, Sherry, Dwight's wife, ex-wife, and I'll get to that in a bit, or you guys already know, she warns him, saying, hey, you gotta go back. There's no hope for you, and Negan's pretty much got this covered. Whether you escape or not, you're doomed. So you might as well have a chance to stay here, just to get on his good side, and then just, join us, basically. Just do what he says. But, Daryl knowing him, he's like, nope. And he still tries. They caught up to him anyways, and Negan tries to say, who are you? And people are saying Negan, which made sense why in last season, the first Saviors that we encountered with Rick and the gang, they were saying, that one Savior, that woman, which I say, hey, we are all Negan. And it kind of made sense now. Like, I mean, we knew that they're, with the Saviors and all that with Negan, but what I meant was, like, why are they claiming that we are Negan? Like, I'm Negan. And I thought it was just a cover-up, for revealing Negan's identity, but in reality, it was more drilled in their heads just saying we belong to Negan. So, in their weird way of saying we are Negan is meaning we belong to Negan. So, and that's what Negan was trying to make a point with that with Daryl, when he caught him, when they captured him, and Daryl refused to answer, so they beat him up for a bit, and they throw him back in the cell playing that goddamn music again. So, and it was just kind of, obviously, even we were kind of feeling, so I think it was more the music itself that was just getting tedious, and and it's true, once you hear this song, especially not one that you might not enjoy over and over, it's gonna wear you down quite a bit, so. And then at the very end, when Daryl, when Dwight takes Daryl out and he shows him to Negan, and Negan, gives him that offer, he gives him the chance, which I kind of like where, compared to Daryl's cell, and he looks, at that one point at Negan's room. I assume that's Negan's room, or maybe it's even better, but I think, and he sees how nice it is, nice bed, even a little television, looks very nice compared to the cell. It's kind of almost a little bit of that temptation that he wanted, he wants to be in that room compared to where he is now. But, then when they take him to the room, Negan's, telling him, like, this all could be yours, all you gotta do is just work for me and be one of my men, and it's all yours, simple as that. He's a man of his word, as Negan points it out. And so he says, so who are you? And then at the end, Daryl said, I think Daryl finally spoke, because I didn't think he spoke almost throughout this the episode until almost around the very end, if I recall. And he says Daryl, and then Negan's, he gets pissed off and he just sent him back to his cell again. But Dwight tells him why'd you say that? You had that chance. And Daryl looks at him and says, I understand why you did it, but it's because it's for someone you care about. I don't have that, so there's for me nothing for me to kneel. I won't kneel for Negan, basically, because I have nothing to. I've already lost a few things. There's nothing else to lose, or there's not somebody where he has to save and all that. Obviously, besides the people like Rick and the gang, but nothing someone personal where he has no choice but to surrender to Negan. Compared to Dwight. And that's kind of more what in Daryl's state what's happening now. So he's not gonna give up. Now Dwight, on the other hand, what I kind of liked about this one was more focus on Dwight's character. In the comics, Dwight is actually a very interesting, somewhat complex character to kind of get into until you kind of get used to him way later down the road. But in the beginning, you thought, oh, he's just a typical right-hand man of Negan, just a regular bad guy. And then, you kind of slowly see that why he... And the comic spoiler, by the way, what I'm about to say from this point on, I believe. So if you don't want that, just stop or skip the video or just stop here. But, okay, so comic book spoiler. Dwight, he'll eventually betray Negan when he joins forces with Rick in Alexandria, and Jesus with the Hilltop Colony, and King Ezekiel with the Kingdom. During this meeting to rebel and actually fight against Negan and the Savior. So he actually goes and betrays him, and gives them all the intel as possible. So, we kind of say, oh, why is he betraying them? And then they go a little bit more of why, and it's kind of like this whole... From that point, it's almost more like this whole double agent kind of situation. But we know, like, even now from this episode, we kind of tell that Dwight just doesn't like Negan. Deep inside, he just doesn't like him whatsoever. But he's afraid to confront him, to go against him. I mean, like everyone else. So, you kind of see with Dwight that he had no choice but to surrender. Well, you thought it was just more for his safety, but in the end, we kind of know it wasn't because of him, it was because of his wife, Sherry. So, we found out that he didn't get captured. He's the one, he actually came back to Negan, begging for forgiveness and all that. And Negan was going to kill him originally, because he escaped with Sherry and Sherry's sister, which was supposedly Negan's future wife or fiance. But obviously she died of a memory of Walker bitter and so forth. So Sherry offered herself to Negan, and in place of not killing Dwight. But obviously for Negan that was good, but not good enough, so we had to iron his face as punishment. And then on top of that, take Dwight's wife. So we kind of understand Dwight's situation. It pretty much sucks, So that's why you kind of see him like he doesn't want to talk to Sherry, contact her, and all that. He's trying his best to avoid that with his, ex-wife now. He is really trying to, but you kind of see that he's just kind of in this place. He's not sure anymore. Like Negan kind of sees his characteristics like around the beginning, where it's like saying, "Why do you still do this kind of work? You're one of my right-hand men, and you don't have to do this anymore, so why you do it?" And he says, "I just like doing it, and I'll still continue doing it." And then, typical Negan just kind of laughs like, "Attaboy." But you can tell, like, he's just... It's more like Dwight's just not sure anymore. Like, he doesn't want to rebel against Negan as much as he wants to, because honestly, he's afraid. He's just afraid to confront him. He'll know it's not going to go good for him, and most importantly for Sherry. Now, he's trying not to go in that talk with Sherry, contact her very much, because he wants to separate those feelings or emotions, what is left of her, so it will make it easier for him to live the rest of his life working under Negan. And then, we saw with Sherry, like, had that false, negative pregnancy test, where she, in the beginning, for people that didn't know, they thought, oh, she's pregnant with Dwight, but obviously it's more for Negan, since Negan's now with Sherry. So, and the worst of all, what we saw around the end, when he was just basically rubbing it in his face, when he was explaining to Daryl about Dwight's situation where he is now. And you can just kind of tell, Dwight was just, like, you didn't feel like the full anger, obviously, because he would have shown some angry face, some expression of anger in front of Negan. Negan was gonna, do something, but you could just kind of tell he just didn't want to hear it. So what I get a sense with Dwight here was, actually, no. The important part, I guess, what I wanted to point out the most was when, when he had to go and capture one of the people from Sanctuary. And the guy, I guess, was one of Dwight's friends or whatever, and he said, you know, why are you doing this? I don't want to be there anymore. I don't want to serve under Negan. Why are we doing it? He's like saying, he's questioning. And Dwight, you know, just keep going, you know, pointing with the gun. And he tells him just to kill him. He says, because it's not worth living if we're just going to serve him forever. He says, why are we, there's many of us and just one of him. Why do we fear him? Besides, you know, with him and his bad, but he believes there's a chance we can stand up to him, but Dwight keeps telling him there is no way to take him down. So, you know, Dwight's mentality is that we can't. He's like, he's just frustrated. He says that we just can't. And then what I think what I kind of think of it now was when the guy you know, that escaped, he said, you know, kill me, go ahead. He just wanted to die. He said, I'd rather be dead than to serve Negan. Now, when Dwight was mentioning about his wife and I think kids or something in danger after his death, then he regretted and he says, okay, I'll go back. And I think that's what I noticed. When he did that, you kind of see Dwight's facial expression as he was walking. I think Dwight felt that because that was what happened to him almost exactly. So basically, he was going to go through the same thing. And, you know, he gave him a mercy kill. He shot him from behind and killed him. So I think that part was very crucial, I think, throughout the whole episode with Dwight. Was because deep inside, that's how he feels with what he was saying. He wants to, you can tell he just wants to get away from Negan or step up against him. But honestly, now he's afraid. In the beginning, he didn't. He kind of had the confidence when he left with Sherry and Sherry's sister. But, you know, later he just had that fear where Negan was too powerful. He had a lot of men, and he says and I think he even told one guy, he's just, like he says, we're winning. I guess what he told him, they said, we have a strong enough group, and it's the most dominant than the rest. So there's no choice but to serve under Negan. And Dwight, you know, when he saw him talking about that, about why do we do it? He says, we don't have to do this. So he kind of saw that glimmer of hope from him. But, well, in his head, it's like saying it's more of an idiotic thing, because you're just going to get yourself killed. But when you mention about his family or loved ones involved too, that's when the guy changed his mind and decided to go back. Just for them, just like Dwight went back to offer himself and to save his wife. To an extent, I mean not exactly, because he was with his wife when he returned, and his wife, in exchange to save Dwight, offered herself up. So right now, what he's doing is just mainly for her. You know, when later he asked her, is he treating you right? And all that, she said yes. And he says, are you feeling happy? Are you good? And he says, yeah. I said, okay, good. So you kind of see between both is just kind of, they're both in this place where they don't want to be. But they do it just for their survival. That's basically what's going on with Dwight and even Sherry in this case. They do what they got to do. You can tell they don't like it. You can kind of see it. You kind of feel that aura. They just don't like it. But they're afraid. They're both afraid. But they have to do it because they want to survive. They want to live. And that's what I think that's what got Dwight a little bit frustrated and emotional when he killed his friend or that guy that escaped, whatever, right after he went back for his family, because it's going to repeat that process, what he's been through exactly. And he says, especially because he has a loved one. And like I said, what kind of made Dwight think a lot more is when Daryl told him that at the end. When Dwight says, why didn't you, just give yourself to Negan? And, Daryl says, I understand why you did it, but me, I have no one personal or a close loved one to protect for. So I have nothing, he's basically, I have nothing to lose, so I will never kneel to him, ever. And Dwight is kind of left, you kind of see a little bit of, kind of left Dwight thinking as he shuts the door. And it kind of made him think. So I think what I'm getting this impression is that Daryl's the one that's going to help him push for him to go and betray Negan and go against him. You know, and help Rick and the gang and the other two communities to fight against Negan in the future all-out war arc that's going to come up, like I said, depending mid-season finale or the season finale is when it's going to start. Or, I mean, you know, the following season, I mean. But, you know what I'm talking about. So, I that's what I'm saying. I think maybe that's Daryl's purpose is what I'm seeing here. In this part, is mostly to push Dwight to have more confidence to actually fight back against Negan. I think that's the whole point of when I'm looking at Daryl's situation. Why he's there, what they're using with his character is more to push Dwight's character, you know, to go up against Negan in the future. Now, we saw a little bit of how things are run in the Sanctuary, or, you know, where the Saviors are, and we saw with the walkers and the poles and all that, and you know how you saw even Dwight's expression about how they're suffering in this with the walkers. It's like very inhumane, but there's a reason why Negan left them like that, which you'll see later, as more of a defense mechanism is going to play out, you know, in the all-out war, which I think is a clever idea for Negan. Well, and you'll see what I mean later. But anyways, so we saw a little bit of how they run things. It's kind of more, and I wouldn't say not really, because they didn't show that much in depth. I mean, there's people that work, that serve food, that, you know, grow crops, well, at least as much as they can, or whatever food supplies they have. And then, you know, Negan and his gang are the ones that take the majority, the other half of every other community to make things easier for them. The only difference is that Negan kind of sees himself, you know, as the big ruler, you know, from them all, and they all fear him. So, but you know, because Daryl's there, and we kind of saw a little bit more how it runs things, I don't know if maybe, again, comic spoiler, I don't know if they're going to use Carl, you know, for the part where he sneaks into Negan's truck when he visits, I think the first time against, on Alexandria. And he tries to infiltrate the Sanctuary, and then Negan was the one that catches Carl, and he shows him everything of what they do, and then he lets him go, if I recall. And he's saying we see even more in depth of what the Sanctuary is. I don't know if that's going to happen, or they're going to completely cut that part out. Since Daryl's already there, they kind of show us a little bit. I don't know if they're going to go later more in depth of what it's like. But personally, I think maybe they'll go with Carl's. They'll do this just like they did in the comics, where Carl we're going to sneak in the truck and Negan's going to show everything what's going on, how they run things personally. Now, I don't know if since Negan says he only has Sherry as his wife now, I don't know if they're going to go with the whole he has multiple wives. Maybe not. I think it's just going to be just one, just Sherry for now. But you know, it is what it is. So overall, and then the other last thing I was going to say is the name of the episode is called The Cell. And the previous episode was all about the kingdom is called The Well. So that was a pretty interesting, you see this interesting transition or contrast between these two communities, you know? Between the kingdom where it's all perfect, you know, at least, but you know, obviously but filled with lies, but for good intentions. And then we see Sanctuary, which is reality, that's built in fear. So, yeah, I thought it was an interesting. I thought it was an interesting episode. Maybe not. I thought it was all right. You know, just all right. Like it wasn't really a waste of time. It was more of a setup of Dwight's situation and a little bit of how Sanctuary is run personally, and then what Daryl's there for. So I think this episode for me was just more about Dwight's character, and trying to understand a little bit of where he's coming from and what he has to deal with. And I think the only important thing I think from that episode is because in the future, for what Dwight's gonna do, like I told you when he betrays Negan and all that. So it's showing us a glimpse of why he's going to eventually do that. You know, what's going to make him stand up and do it. And as I said, that's what I think what Daryl is being used for, is to push Dwight for his confidence to stand up to Negan. So I think that's Daryl's main purpose. At least that's what I feel. That's what I'm getting at when I see that episode. When I saw that episode. So yeah, and I think that's all I can think of, or at least it's got to say. So again, so that's what we kind of overall just see what Daryl's being used for, what how Negan runs, a little bit of how Negan runs things there, and then more importantly, this whole episode, majority is just more what Dwight's state of mind is, and more about his character, him and Sherry, and what he's going through. And like I said, I think the only reason this episode is important is because of what Dwight's going to do in the future. Because they didn't really focus as much on Dwight, and they kind of just skimmed through it, regularly without this part. And then all of a sudden you see Dwight just betrays Negan. It kind of goes, people are like, huh? It's like, what? Why? And then they have to do maybe they'll show a flashback of his reasons and all that, which I think would be a waste of time. I'd rather just do it like right now. I think it's perfectly fine of how they're handling it with Dwight's character. So I think this is good for Dwight's character. So all in all, I think this episode is more of a Dwight episode, just to understand more of his character's state of mind and a situation of what he's going through right now. So yeah, I think that's all I gotta say. So overall, I thought this was an alright episode. It was alright. So, but personally, I think it was necessary. I honestly did. I thought it was necessary. And yeah, I think that's all I gotta say about this one. So, if you liked what I do, if you liked my video, then you know what to do. And as I always say to everyone, I hope you all have a nice